send you
Okay,
my
we
bio.
have billionaire on the program today. I don't want to make light of who we have access to. This is a Nepo connection for us.
It's
a
pretty
friend's
crazy.
father that we're able to get, an executive in the music business. You may have heard of Sony, okay? Maybe you've heard of Britney Spears. He had nothing to do with the conservatorship. Maybe he did. We don't know. We're going to get into it. I would estimate he's worth easily, I would say $500 million. I could be off.
Does
I don't
that
want to be
sound right?
offensive. Does that sound about right?
Well, in fractions of pennies, perhaps, yes.
So Dan, do you know what you're getting into today? Or do you have any
No idea.
familiarity? So Robbie reached out to you and Sophie, correct?
Yeah, we wanted to have a father on. Rachel and I are navigating. How many daughters do you have?
I have 2 daughters.
Okay, so
And
And a son, 3 kids.
yeah, but it's good with the 2
Yes.
daughters because look, he could help us.
Oh, sure.
He has raised daughters.
Yes, but Sophie and Clara, that's her name, right? Have a
Clara,
good
yep.
relationship. And Robbie and I have a complicated one. So that is a different dynamic maybe than what you're used to. So this is Mr. Dan Zucker.
He's a father to 3 kids, 2 daughters. I met him actually because I did his kids show, and he was a supportive father, which is very new for me to see, but he had been at the show. We enjoyed each other. He even paid me a compliment.
Oh.
And I tend to relate more to people's parents or their grandparents if they didn't, because Sophie, she grew up well. She's got a house in the tri-state. She grew up probably a nice apartment in Manhattan. But maybe Dan didn't.
Sure.
Right? So that's why I always relate to kind of the older generation. And it's been kind of a curse of mine. So that's why I want to know where you started. We have Dan Zucker now on the pod, but where is Dan from? How did Dan, we try and be inspirational on this pod where we can to inspire people. If you got nothing, or maybe he does come from something, but he made that even more.
Sure.
We want to show you success stories, how to become a $500 million type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your story?
So my story is I grew up in Connecticut. Both my parents grew up mostly in Manhattan. My father was born in the Bronx. I'm an Eastern European Jew. My ancestors are going way back for you. Hungary, Poland,
Sure.
Lithuania, I think, because we're.
I think
all
I'm
came from,
Lithuanian too on my mom's side.
Yeah. That's on my mother's side too.
Did they come through
So
Ellis
my parents
Island?
then did. They all came through Ellis Island. Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, no, that's not true because some predated Ellis Island.
Wow.
So I'm not
then
sure what they came through, but some were before.
Maybe a plane
as my
running
great
around.
grandparents were as early as like the 1880s
Wow.
came to New York. So my parents then got married and did the 50s suburban thing
Mm-hmm.
and moved to Connecticut and had 4 children.
Are you
Well,
the
Robbie, to you,
richest
maybe
of all
that's nothing.
4? Or were they all very successful?
Everyone is very successful.
Wow.
Are you the
I mean,
richest,
I'm
Dan?
not-
Between me and you, we're rooting for you. You know where I stand.
I have no idea. We've all done okay.
Who's
But,
done the best?
We're all fine.
A little sibling rivalry.
Who's
I
what?
have 9 siblings. We know. I could tell you who's done the best.
Is it you?
No, I would say my sister Chaya.
That's crazy.
Money-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, her and her husband, they're both executives
At what?
in tech. She's a tech sales. She's
Huh.
worked sales her whole life, a ton of money.
Okay.
And he runs a gaming.
Xbox?
No, like Assassin's Creed and these different video
Wow,
games.
that's pretty good, Dan.
So Dan's doing
That's
the
good.
best here on the record. Here on the record, you're doing the best of all of your siblings.
Yeah, within this podcast, yes.
Within this
of
podcast.
the siblings who are on the podcast, yes.
Okay, and then
I do not know. We do not compare.
But were you
but they're all
always
doing
into
well.
music?
I was always into music. We were all I grew up in a very musical household.
Mm.
My grandparents, particularly my mother's parents, were opera fanatics. My grandfather
Wow.
would get on a train and go up to Montreal to hear a
I'm from
Maria
Montreal.
Callas
You from
recital.
New York or Montreal, Robbie?
Well,
Choose.
I'm from both. That is the absolute truth.
All right.
So they were opera fanatics. Growing up, my parents would race into the city twice a week to go to the opera, the Metropolitan Opera one night, New York City Opera another night. So we just grew up with a lot of music.
Wow.
And there were, often debates as to what was appropriate to play at dinner time, because we didn't love opera and they
Right.
didn't love the rock and roll. So
And-
usually we settled on show tunes.
Did they think rock and roll was corrupting the youth? Was that their stance, or it was more of a taste
No,
thing?
it was more just creative. They liked Simon and Garfunkel,
Same.
and they actually liked the Beatles. They appreciated those. They thought that had a songwriting craft.
What did they think of Elvis? I was a big Elvis head, but he gyrates.
Yeah, Elvis wasn't big in our
older.
family because we were a little later. I'm the third, so I'm the third of the four. I'm the youngest boy.
Okay.
And my brother is 4 years older, so he was maybe a little bit. We were a little late for the Elvis craze.
I understand.
He was a little boy,
I understand.
Wow.
except the Vegas part, and we weren't really into that.
Right. Okay.
And your parents, are they still with us?
No, my mother passed away last October, and my father
Horrendous.
passed away 22 years ago.
22. Did they
Yeah.
he got to see you successful, nachis, all this?
He knew that all of 4 kids were up and in careers and doing fine. Yeah.
Okay, but he didn't see you
He
at
got to
your
see that.
glory. Like, did you have any, like what's the biggest deal you ever signed or did or whatever? I don't even know what the job is really, but what did you have
He
to
does
do?
legal and business affairs, correct?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I was Googling you earlier,
Oh,
so I
good.
saw.
Really, and I'm in there. I departed RCA Records 10 days ago, but
Oh my God.
that could be a different story.
So now
Oh
what?
my God.
What the heck now?
He's retired. Look at
Well,
this.
we can get to that. That's
Let's get
that's
to
not
it.
so interesting. That's more like corporate talk.
No, we
you wanna
love
hear that?
corporate talk.
here because we don't
It
get
affects
enough of
the
it.
stock market.
And if you were our father, we would ask these questions. We have nobody. My father kind of had in and out jobs. Like, there was no one to go to say, like, what's, just having work stories.
Yes.
We don't have work stories or
No.
anything, any kind of office talk.
Well, I'll tell you the most exciting deal. How about I'll tell you that one
please.
first. And this goes back to, it was 1999.
Oh my God.
So I was
What a
at Jive
year for
Records
film.
then.
For film.
So we had at the time, we had the Backstreet Boys, who had absolutely exploded. We had Britney
Incredible.
Spears, who had exploded.
Incredible.
We had
Did you think she was
we had
hot?
Aaron Carter. She was a child,
All right.
so
all right.
I didn't think of those terms.
Okay.
I thought she was
Good
she was a
father.
really hardworking,
He passed.
talented, really young artist.
Dan, you're good. Your life
Well,
goes
he's
on.
in legal. He knows how to
He
get
knows how
himself
to
out
talk.
of trouble. Yeah.
I know. He's playing nice with us. He could nail us in 2 seconds. Have our whole thing wiped
Yeah,
tomorrow.
no problem. Sorry, go on.
Okay, go on. We interrupt a
I
lot.
have
We
such
have
power. So
issues.
that's okay. We did not have NSYNC at the time. They were signed to a major record company,
Mm-hmm.
BMG, RCA Records of all things, which is not. I was not there. I was at Jive, which was an independent label. And they were going through, it turns out that they were going through a nasty
Lou
process. Well, oh, wow, I'm very impressed.
I don't know
with
about
the
that.
late Lou Pearlman, who
Yeah.
I knew, we at Jive knew very well because he had managed and signed the Backstreet Boys, and then he
Okay.
did the same thing with NSYNC. And he was doing some pretty awful things contractually. And they were claiming that
Would
they
you
were out
say
of contract.
raping contractually? Would you use this type of terminology?
Why? You don't have to.
No,
That's
it's
a physically violent term. I know that I would use that. He was
Passed
business wise screwing them mightily on a deal that wasn't particularly fair anyway.
Okay.
But he wasn't living up to his obligations under the deal. So they asserted that they could terminate their deal.
Wow.
And no label would touch it, but we did. We analyzed it and we hired outside litigators and we went in there and we signed them like literally in the dark of night.
Oh my
We flew up to
God.
Toronto and signed them, and then we snuck in.
Why
and
in
then
Toronto?
Snuck out because it was the last night of their world tour, and they wanted everyone from RCA
Mm-hmm.
descended on them. They were kids. I mean, Justin had just like he had just turned 18, I think, at the time.
Okay, so you got them when they
Wow.
were still hot. That there was still a lot of money
Oh,
to be
they were
made.
incredible. Yeah. We then had their next two albums. Their last two. RCA put out their
And
first
did you
album,
pay
and then we
them
put out No
fairly?
Strings Attached with Bye Bye Bye. We played them
Unreal.
very fairly. Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
do you think you made more money than Justin Timberlake, or you made about the same, or he made more than you?
Well, it depends what the definition of you is. If you mean the owner of
No, I mean you
Jive.
personally. You didn't make more than Justin Timberlake.
Oh God,
No. Okay. You were okay, but he got paid handsomely from this point forward. They
Was
all
he
did.
nice?
He's been paid very nicely. Deserves everything he's gotten. Yes.
I like his TikToks.
He makes me sick now, but I did have the biggest crush on him.
I
growing
never
up.
had a crush. I only respected his talent.
You know what? I was dealing with my sexuality because he was dating Britney, and I couldn't tell if I was
Oh
attracted
wait, he's
to her.
actually a bad guy. I forgot.
He's not bad. He has bad. Everybody has bad and good. It's enough
No,
of this
he
black
did not
and white.
treat Britney Spears
Sure,
well.
but he has other things that are fine, that are good.
Sure. But in the market of commerce, you have to decide who you're supporting.
Yeah, it's
sometimes.
like, okay, is Justin Timberlake the worst guy to ever walk the earth with?
No, that's not what I'm
Hamas and-
saying.
Like, come on, let's wake
no,
up. Were you the
Lots of shows,
coolest dad of all time? Did you love being dad? Like, what was it like working such a big job, also having kids, getting to share kind of the perks with the kids?
That was fun. I used to coach soccer, West Side Soccer, like little
Sure.
kids playing soccer.
Yep.
Yeah.
My son is a great athlete. It was really fun to coach him. Sophie and Clara, they're coordinated. They're not the most aggressive athletes, but they all played soccer, and I would coach. And for Sophie in particular, at the end of the season, when we'd have a little party, I'd bring all the kids like mounds of CDs, and they would just love it.
Oh
It was
my
back
God.
when they
Imagine
were
your
You know
dad
what?
CDs.
my
Well-
dad showed up, and it's like, oh my God, my life is over.
Well, my dad always wanted to be a musician or conductor or something. I don't know how familiar you are with my story. Perhaps not at all, but I don't have a good dad. Neither does Robbie. He used to give me CDs to study and go to sleep to, like classical music CDs. But then 1 year he said he wanted them back, even though they were a birthday present. And then he, for years, threatened to sue me to get the CDs back.
Very litigious.
Because I didn't know where they had gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I got
Valuable
CDs
commodities.
too. Yep. But
Yeah.
a little bit different.
Yeah.
So what
Wow.
do you
What
think?
do you
That's
think
too
of
bad.
that, Dan? What do you have to say on that?
What's that?
What do you think
On that,
on
my,
that?
my
Yeah.
comment on that, that's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah, thank you
yeah,
so
yeah.
much.
Yeah. And it's your father's loss as much as your loss. Like,
Exactly.
he missed
Bingo
out.
is
Now
a
I have a
shame, huh?
question for you legally.
Yeah.
Now let's say I'm working on a project that is inspired by my dad as a person or his story. Is he entitled to my money?
Yeah.
No, I mean I wouldn't use his name. I
No,
might
of course
avoid
not.
using the name directly. No.
It's based on true events or inspired
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
Inspired. I always stick to inspired just in case my whole
Yeah,
family's
Well, of
very
course it's
litigious.
inspired.
You
You're
want
okay.
inspired. You don't even want based. Because
Okay.
they take,
They'll
remember
take-
Kramer and Seinfeld. They, you have to say inspired.
Okay, so that's fine legally.
Yeah, and use you're
You're
using
allowed to
your
be
own life
inspired by
experiences.
anything.
Of course.
Based is
And what do you think of how all music sounds the same lately?
I think the process of signing and developing artists has changed somewhat. I mean, it still can happen, magnificently. Like we have the artist HER, who we signed when she was 13,
Wow.
and she was just allowed to grow and develop and learn as a musician. And then when she was ready to put out music, we put out music, and it really was a very long process.
But you would just
But
give her
we put-
money to just like grow into herself, basically, and give her the resources.
She was signed through a production company that really was heavily involved in developing her and
would you
giving
call
her
them groomers?
music
or-
lessons.
Well, no, okay. I don't know. I thought no. Okay, I just want to get the best. Did you ever meet Britney personally? Do you meet some of these artists, not just at the show, but I mean in a real way? You're sitting in an office, you're explaining her contract. You know, even me, I call my lawyer. I want to know what's going on.
I love my lawyer.
I like to know. Now, Sophie is married now.
She is.
You like the guy?
Love Jesse.
And he's quite older than her, isn't he?
He is.
So you like Jesse, you like her husband, your daughters are getting married. He's older. You had no issue. You know, Freud was Jewish, and he would say maybe she had a daddy thing. Have you heard of daddy stuff in society, or no? It's gone over your head. Maybe she had such a reverence for you, and I don't mean this in any. I just mean it psychologically 101 speaking. Maybe she was looking for somebody.
I've heard of it from a Psych 101 perspective, yes.
Yeah. You know, we don't have a daddy thing, for instance. We're both lesbians. Gay. Because maybe our father wasn't.
Legally, do you think we're gay because of the dad stuff?
I think psychologically, probably a little bit. Because look at Sophie. She found her dad, and now she gets to sleep with him every night, so to speak, as Freud. No, not in that way, but in a comforting... We're with women. We are with women.
I don't know. But wouldn't you think we'd want to be with men because we didn't have it?
We just
we're trying
don't know.
To fill a gap.
No, because we're not comfortable with men.
I understand.
She was comfortable her whole life. Now she goes to sleep with a man. It makes sense.
I understand.
If I was sleeping with a man, I'd be like, "What's he doing here? He was never here."
Right.
Suddenly he's here. It makes no sense.
That's pretty funny.
So yes, I did. Get the opportunity to see Britney outside of backstage.
Thank you.
The times that I saw her, it was in the early days. It was adorable because she would literally come to our conference room, like down the hall from me, with her tutor, and she would study, like, because she was doing performances or doing promo or whatever, and she would come to our offices and just sit and
what did she
study?
Did she want to learn math?
She was like 16, 17 years old.
She had to do her credits. She had to get her GED.
Did she?
Of course.
You don't have to.
You have to. You have to graduate high school.
No, you don't.
I think you have to go to 15. What age can you really drop out?
You have to be in school until I think 14, depending on the state. But you don't have to get a degree. If I was her, I'd just hang out.
Well, did she get her degree or not, Dan?
I do not know.
Ugh.
I don't know.
And did you meet her parents? Abusers, whatever you call them? I don't. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very interesting. How
complicated.
Yes. Even then,
the relationship with the father is complicated.
Okay. Yes. Why?
Because he was not, from what I know, was not so involved in her life at certain times. But when she had, a real breakdown, a real problem, he did go in there. And he's been vilified for this conservatorship, but in many ways, certainly at the time it was created, it did protect her.
And we're seeing the fallout now.
I think he actually did. I think at the time he did the right thing.
Yeah. And
what happened after that with compensation and all that, I don't know, that's between them and the courts and all that. But
what did you think? Did they bring you Jamie Lynn Spears? Did you have to humor them? We'll take Jamie Lynn. We'll do something. She
was really talented. Her sister.
Really?
We considered her sister, and she was doing that TV show.
Zoe
right?
101.
Watched it.
My favorite show. I'd watch it again. Reboot, please. Zoe 101.
And then, if you remember what happened, she got pregnant.
Yep.
At like 17 or something.
You think her parents didn't talk did you talk to your kids? Hey, don't get knocked up and ruin your life, or you just let it, either, did they know not to do that?
I think they knew. I don't think.
Was there a conversation?
I don't think we had that specific conversation.
But it's amazing.
Well, in health class in high school, they showed us Degrassi a lot, so we learned a lot from that.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you and Sophie would have seen the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. How did you yourself manage work-life balance?
It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't insane. I mean, I often wasn't home for dinner, but I was home to read every there were 7, I think, every Harry Potter book to a succession of children.
Wow.
Like the first one, I probably just read to Sophie, and then 2 and 3, maybe I read to
You read them all out loud?
Sophie and Bet. Read them all out loud.
Thousands of pages.
Oh, I loved it. Oh, yeah. Especially when it got
I
to
would
the
argue
7th. Each
bedtime
book
is
was
probably
longer.
the most important. You picked right. Like dinner, I almost don't remember. Going to bed was like, going to bed? Who you go to bed with? If we went to bed with a father, I'm telling you right now, not to get sick about it, we'd be straight.
I don't know. When my parents were together, my dad was he had a snore that was so loud it sounded like all my dreams were at the circus or the zoo because it sounded like a lion. So I don't know so much if he was around if it would have been good. And then I had insomnia for 20 years. So,
but you were there for bedtime.
I was, but speaking of snoring, there were times when I would come home tired
yes.
from
It's
work,
insane,
and I'd be reading to them. And at some point, whatever kid was next to me would elbow me and say, Dad, because I would have fallen asleep and started like muttering different words.
Wow.
But it was so it was a balance.
Did your wife work?
I did like to coach the sports.
Yeah.
She was working when Sophie was born. Sophie's the oldest. She was the legal director of the ACLU of New Jersey. Big job. She's a lawyer.
Great.
Always done public service work. Sophie was born. She took her maternity leave, went back to the ACLU for about 2 months, and then said, "No, I want to be home with my child."
Okay, so she was home.
Then she was home,
Nice.
and then not until the kids were grown up did she go back to.
So you were the
lawyering.
sole breadwinner for many years, so to speak.
Yes, I was. Yes.
Did you carry cash on you, or are you a cash guy? You open the wallet. What do you got in there? Hundos?
It's not safe to walk around with that.
I don't know if I have any cash in my wallet anymore. I mean, he used his cash.
But you used to
when I
use
first
cash?
started, when I first started working in New York, I had tokens in my pocket because that's how you got on the subway. So yeah, I had cash and change and all that stuff. When I first started working, if you wanted to get cash, you took a check to the bank for $50.
Paper for paper.
Now, I wanted to talk about famous fathers right now as Hunter Biden gets locked up. What do you think of Joe Biden as a father?
It's a great question, Robbie.
He seems to be a very supportive father.
He lost a kid.
He's lost several, right? He going back to 72 or 73 when he had just been elected to the Senate, and his wife and I think 2 of his kids, right, were killed in a car accident.
God.
And then his son to cancer, and then he's about to lose another one to incarceration. I mean, it takes.
Yeah, it's kind of tragic.
We think he's a good. First of all,
he's the nation's father at the moment.
You think that he's the father. And I know that there's this narrative, but I wanted to talk to a father who was actually involved with his kids as you are, and I saw you in the flesh. While you were working your big job, coming to these whatever comedy shows, having a good time because you enjoyed it, you enjoy your kid, and you enjoy, like, I just saw you out. And I'm like, wow, and I said, Sophie, I love your family. She said, they love you. I said, it's just so nice to see a nice family. So when I look at Biden, I go, I feel you have to imagine that Hunter is just trying to get attention from his dad. He's screaming as loud as he can just to get a hug. I mean, in the beginning, he's addicted to crack, no attention for the father. The Bo dies. Hunter fucks Bo's wife. He starts sleeping with his brother's wife. It's insane. Screaming, basically, subconsciously, not to bring Freud back into it. But we're all just screaming, basically, Daddy, look at me. Like, what does he have to do? That's not good enough for Joe.
Because now
that's not good enough for Joe to give attention.
He doesn't have kids. Like, Hunter doesn't have to compete with kids anymore. Why is he still screaming? Don't you think?
It's a wound that never heals. Look at us.
Sure.
And our problems. So, and then I want to just finish with his timeline. Hunter, so he's sleeping with the wife. That doesn't do it. He gets somebody pregnant. I don't even know who. The same situation with Jamie Lynn. He decides to knock up. And he has this daughter.
I didn't know
that he denies. And he gets into this mess. And now, due to all of his issues, he's now literally being incarcerated while his father is the sitting president. And all probably, if Joe, and this is, my rant is almost over. Joe claims, first of all, that he calls all 6, and he has 7 grandkids, but he calls all 6 of his grandkids. He's always overcompensating Joe to explain that he was a good father. It's like, Joe, it's okay. We know you're a workaholic. You're working your whole life. There's not a lot of time. We understand that.
And you know what the issue is too? Is he takes the train everywhere.
He's taking the train.
If he's taking the plane, he'd have more time to see
Way
his
more
family
time.
in the aggregate.
But then he could die like Kobe did doing that.
That's true. So you take
So
Air
there's
Force
risk.
One.
So I'm almost done the rant, but it's basically that Joe Biden claims he's always overcompensating what kind of a father and grandfather he is. He's like, I call each one of my 6 grandkids every single day. It's like, Joe, that's too much.
I called
Why
my
is way
grandma
too
every
much?
day. I loved my grandma.
But Joe Biden doesn't need to call each one of his grandkids every single day. If I was
So
one of his
what's the
grandparents,
question for Dan?
I would say if I was one of the grandkids, I'd be like, Zadie, don't you have the like I'm
Of
good
course, of
since
course.
yesterday. So my thing is, now he's finally incarcerated himself while his father is up for re-election in the craziest time, just probably to get that hug we all saw. It was like all just like, how loud does he have to scream to get attention? He didn't die in a car crash. He didn't die a war hero. And I don't know, what's your take on sort of that attention seeking and the new lens I've put on Biden as maybe not the world's greatest father, and that's fine.
I don't know.
How do you think the industry has changed? Even just I mean, your kid's a performer, writer, so are we. It's a disaster what we're dealing with, and I'm sure it's reflected in the music industry as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been, in some ways, it's harder. In some ways, I'd say for what you all do. I mean, there's been some contracting after there was a little bit of a COVID bubble, but there is so much, desire for content, right? Because there's so many streamers, there's so many services, and they crave content, audio, video. So that's great for all of you talented creators. But it's tough. The business then has ups and downs and things start and stop. On the music side, I mean, the music business, the 2000s, the first decade, 12 or so years were a disaster. Because when
Really?
Napster came in, CD sales just they plummeted, and piracy just took hold.
Yeah,
and you know what? And they deserve that, because who doesn't remember being charged $25 USD for a Creed CD? I mean, it was criminal. It was criminal.
Well, for Creed in particular, but
Yeah.
but to
So
hear
karma's a
Celine Dion
bitch.
saying whatever that song was from Titanic, wouldn't you were happy to pay
I know, but happy to
$15.99 for
pay.
one song.
Who could afford? It was crazy.
I know. That was
insane.
a lot. That was a very successful time for the business.
Had they
started
charged
right at the tail end of that.
$5, had they charged $5 a CD and not been such chazers, such pigs, there wouldn't have been a necessity to steal it. Be reasonable. We'll give Celine $7 an album.
But I don't know, because stealing led to then Apple introduced the downloads. Which was great. There was a legal basis to buy a song for 99 cents, right?
Yes.
I still had
but
LimeWire.
it turned the business upside down, because suddenly consumers were buying songs, not albums. So they were paying 99 cents, not
Well, not every
$15.99.
song
So
on an album is good.
No.
Well, exactly.
Sometimes
and that hasn't really changed.
I know what's going on with that.
Streaming has really expanded. There's more consumption of music really than ever, and it's a beautiful thing. It's like there were a lot of people in the industry who resisted the idea of streaming, saying no, consumers want to own their music. And I always thought, I think people just want to listen to music.
Yeah, I don't
want
care
to hear
about
it.
ownership.
And they just want to have access. When I was first exposed to it, it's just the most incredible thing. I mean, like, I can listen to whatever I want, whenever I want to, wherever I am. That's amazing.
Are musicians making more or less money now?
More. The deals.
Really?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're talking. What kind of musician? The artist deals. So from what I see, coming from a record label, the artist deals are far more favorable to the artist than they used to be. They're getting, in some cases, huge advances, much more favorable compensation, per stream. Now it largely is, and they can do very nicely. And record companies are taking big swings on unknown artists, which is great for the artists. I mean, a lot of the A&R, right? So those are the people who go out and find the artists.
Right.
What's A&R
Much of
stand for
A&R
again?
It stands for artist and repertoire. So I've always viewed it as like they're the ones who sign the artist and then develop the repertoire. In theory, that's what they do. And some do that very nicely. The head of RCA, his name is Peter Edge. He came from A&R, and he was among the best in the business and still is.
Wow.
So, and he's always loved to develop artists, but as a record label, what we have to do is also follow the trends. So there's a lot of data analysis that's now, and every label does it, that is now analyzing, TikTok trends is a big part of it.
Oh no, not TikTok.
And just doing all sorts of research to see and crunching data to see what's hot and then trying to pick things up. And so there'll be heavy competition for these unknown artists, some of whom then, are evaluated to be like, wow, this is a talented person. We think we could develop a career.
Yeah.
And some are like, well, this is a song that could do very nicely.
Because you're so successful in this album, do any of your kids do music?
Well, it was Sophie, Rachel, I don't know if you knew this, but Sophie, when she was younger, she wanted to be a pop star.
Yes.
Before she went to college, she wanted to be a pop star. And she was really angry that we weren't giving her that opportunity because she thought that at the age of 15, she was more talented than most 15-year-olds, but that everyone would gradually catch up to her. So she was going to miss her moment if we didn't.
And you had to tell her you
pursue it.
didn't think she was that talented.
No, we
how
thought she
did
was
that
very talented. We
conversation
just didn't
go?
think it would be a great career. We thought that she should.
So
go to
how did
college.
you navigate that? Because you could have put her through that machine,
Well, I couldn't really. I didn't have that power anyway.
No, you don't
so
think you could have shoved her in a room with Lou Pearlman, figure something out?
That was definitely not going to happen.
Okay.
Certainly by choice.
Okay. I hear you. But none of your kids are actively in a musical pursuit.
No, but Sophie has, her one-woman show, Sophie Sex Face.
Right.
Which,
is there pressure you put on yourself to do, like, are you more successful than your parents?
No.
No?
I mean, we're different successful. No. My father was a doctor. I mean, I would say I was less successful because he was internal medicine and he had a family practice and just did a wonderful thing.
Like do you have a pressure to push your kids, like to get your kid, like, okay, Sophie wants to do this music. I have these connections. You're seeing so much nepotism. Do you feel like, oh, I'm in a position to provide nepotism? And why not squeeze that muscle? Or you don't,
I've not much. I've used the nepotism to take them backstage for concerts.
Oh, what good. That's the best
because
nepotism.
It's not really, because they do have to do it on their own. And whatever influence I have does not extend to comedy, live comedy, film, TV, all the things that she's pursuing
now
and doing. And
do you still get concert hookups?
Well, I've just left RCA, so we'll see how well that goes.
Yes, tell us what happened with that.
Yeah, what happened?
So this is a tale about corporate America. So
please,
and I have a non-disparagement clause in my separation agreement. So I will only say the most glowing things about Sony
Could
Music.
we say we fucking hate them or no? Because we'll do whatever you want.
I work on the Sony lot.
Okay, we like them. We like them.
There you go. And I have a lot of people who I like who are still there.
And the Sony Walkman, you got to give credit. You got to give credit. They nailed it out of the park with the Sony Walkman.
They nailed the Walkman. They totally missed
Is Sony Japan?
The iPod.
I'm sure. Yeah.
They should have invented the iPod and they missed it.
Did they
right? 'Cause
do
had the
Zune?
Walkman. They had it.
Did
They use Zoom.
Did they do Zune? Remember Zune? It was like the iPod
Oh.
competitor.
Yes, because they missed it. They should have done the iPod before the
Idiots.
iPod.
Yeah.
They had the Walkman. They created the portable music
Yeah.
device.
I still love the Walkman. And you know what?
What?
They ended on a high, like season 9 of Seinfeld. Just leave on a high.
Who ended on a high?
Sony with their product. They ended
You
on
think
the
they
on the
should have
Walkman.
dissolved after?
No, because look what Apple's descending into. That concocted disgusting abomination of a watch.
I know, you're always on about this.
So it's like it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, go on.
So the music business is viewing the future not as bleak as, the post Napster future when
Okay.
the industry revenues plummeted. They literally dropped by 50%.
That was your guys'
disaster.
Great Depression, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Oh
And
my
many
God.
people who I worked with for many years, they left the industry and the jobs just never came back.
Were you on food stamps? How dire was the situation?
I kept having a job because
Okay, good.
being fortunate, lucky enough to be connected to the labels and the groups that were
I'm
kind of
so
the
proud
winners
of you,
of
Dan.
consolidations, labels consolidated.
Oh,
So now what's happening, the industry is looking, and it's not just Sony, right? There are 3 major record companies. There's Universal, there's Warner, and there's Sony. And they're looking at headwinds in the coming years
Mm-hmm.
from the streaming market maturing, meaning that the number of the revenues that come in largely are from subscribers. You probably have Spotify accounts.
I have Apple, actually.
I
'cause
get
of the
Amazon
Beatles.
Music free
Why?
because I have a friend who works in development and I worked at Nepo. She got, as a part of her job hire, she has 3 accounts. She gets to give 2 to friends. She gave
You
one to me.
got one?
I got Amazon Music, but it's one of the worst services. Thank God
Oh
it's
well,
free.
yeah. They have a limited service. They have a Spotify or Apple like service, but they have a limited, which just puts up.
Sometimes
much
people
less
will
than all,
say,
but-
check out this song. You might like, Roan Chapel or whatever. And I go, oh, sorry, Amazon Music doesn't have it.
You still managed to box yourself into a corner somehow.
I don't know.
You managed to be culturally excluded despite being in the zeitgeist.
So they're seeing that the streaming market, that the revenues from subscriptions, the growth is slowing. So revenues are increasing, but they think they see it, and it's inevitable, right? There's only
I
so
understand
many
that it's
who can subscribe.
plateauing. Yeah,
You
we're not
mean
having.
that
So it's starting to
because of
plateau in
the
the-
population plateau, because people aren't having kids anymore.
Exactly.
Fewer artists, fewer listeners.
Rihanna
Well,
Well,
does
and
want
more
to.
people have gobbled up subscriptions, and then their family subscriptions. I have one subscription. So
Oh,
my
I understand.
kids
So
and
it's
my
less
mother,
about
who was an
sex.
opera fanatic as well at the time, all got to share in our family subscription.
Right, but they're gonna come down like Netflix. They're gonna Jew parse it out. Everybody's got one subscription per person. There's not gonna be different profiles anymore. I had a question for you on the finance side of that. I understand that it's plateauing in terms of the quantity of customers. The customer base is plateauing. Why is revenue, you said, still increasing?
Because it's still growing somewhat, but instead of growing, 10, 12, 15%, now it's growing 3, 4, 5%.
And where are they getting
it's slowing
revenue
down.
from besides is it just a subscriber model or are you talking advertise? Where does most of the revenue come from?
Most comes from subscription.
Wow.
Some comes from advertising, and some comes from physical. The CD market is really small. Vinyl is
That's like
there.
us.
It's cute, but it's there. And then there's licensing, right? So music and shows and advertising, TV and all that stuff. So that brings in money too.
Okay,
Okay.
interesting. So what?
Right. Oh,
So
I
they're
thought
looking
that
at that. They're
touring was
looking
the
at
most
AI.
money. I thought touring was the most
Maybe
money.
for artists.
No.
Artists. The record companies
Oh.
occasionally participate in a very small piece of a tour.
Oh,
But for the most part, that's all the artists.
I
They
understand.
do that, and they're doing all the work. I mean, in their early
Exactly.
stages of careers, we'll support artists because they're not making money. They're losing money while they tour. So if we have an artist who's in that situation, we'll support them because it's good for them to be. So they're looking at that. They're looking at revenues, eventually going down. They're looking at the uncertainty of AI. Everybody's uncertain what it could mean, what it could mean in your business, what it could be in the music business. And so they decided that they needed to make a kind of pretty substantial structural change to how the company is structured in terms of the senior executives.
Because you're paid a lot, so they're trying to offload some of the
paid
higher.
enough. I'm not paid what the what the label heads and others, but I'm paid something.
Oh yeah.
So what they did for the labels, they removed the business affairs heads. For the most part, they removed the CFOs, the chief financial officers.
Crazy.
They centralized a lot of functions, moved them from the label within to the corporate. So it was just a big process that they view as being necessary to evolve into the future.
But you got a big payout from that.
Sony has, decent severance policies. So
okay, you're not going on food stamps. Do we need to put a GoFundMe out for our listeners for you, or you're okay?
Who have you hobnobbed? Because when I googled you, I saw you in pictures. You're often on the outer edge of the picture.
Yeah, he's like the low key guy.
That's where they want the lawyers. Yeah, right. On the outer edge.
But you're in pictures with SZA, Britney Spears.
Shit.
You're in the room where it happens.
Do you ever think of giving Britney a call and saying, "Hey, we got this house in Connecticut"?
It's not Connecticut.
Oh, where is he?
He's from Connecticut.
Okay, we got this house.
Upstate.
Don't even worry where it is. It's upstate.
New York.
It's totally private. We got a guard dog. Come here. Take a few weeks. Take a load off. You ever think to reach out as a dad?
We do have a dog who looks kind of scary. He's got crazy blue eyes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big dog and he can bark.
Do you have favorite? Well, let me ask you a question along the lines of fatherhood. Do you think that people who have good paternal figures have a competitive edge for the rest of their lives? Or do you think actually people without fathers maybe have more to say?
I think everyone comes from somewhere, right? So some people are better at telling stories or their stories than others. And you guys are both very good at it.
Thank you.
I think Sophia's too, and
Rock.
Her
we're
sister
getting
is a theater
compliments.
Director, and she's great at that. And
Yes.
so I think it could come from anywhere, whatever your source of creativity. I really admire it.
Do you have any advice for us?
You guys, I think, are probably beyond the advice, as is Sophie now, beyond the advice,
You
and
think?
Clara, who's the advice that I gave Sophie at the time when she came back from her semester abroad. Her friends were going to like Paris and Florence, and all their parents like, oh, we're gonna go to Europe to visit our kid. Sophie was in Chicago, and her semester abroad was at Second City.
Yeah.
And so when we visited, it was literally -1 before the wind chill. But she came out of that, and she said, "This is what I want to do. I want to pursue a career in comedy." And so the advice I gave her at the time was advice that I'd heard from someone in Wynton Marsalis's jazz ensemble. I'd heard him say this to high school jazz kids. And somebody had asked this trumpet player if he had any advice for them. He said yes. It was the same advice I gave Sophie, which was don't have a B plan. Maybe that's contrary to what you would expect a parent to say, but I said to Sophie, don't have a B plan, because if you have a B plan, it will be too easy to fall back on it.
Please.
So go for it and put your all into it, work as hard as you can. And if at some point you decide that it's not for you, then you have developed all sorts of skills in the process and you'll do something else.
Not
so
to
my whole
poke
thing was
holes.
just
I
like,
love
just
that
go
advice.
for it.
Don't
Just
you think
do
it's
it
the
and work
kind
hard.
of thing? Don't you think that's the kind of thing you don't get to decide? Like Sophie does technically have a B plan because you're the B plan. It's not a real plan, but she could go home and sleep in the
Yes.
bed right behind you. So
Yes,
don't,
that
it's
she
not
does.
something
She
you
has.
plan to have like for somebody who doesn't have a B plan,
Yeah.
first of all, I'd love the option to maybe have one or not have one. But we only have an A plan just because there's nowhere to go.
Right.
Like, where would there's nowhere to go. My mother
you
doesn't
got,
have
but
room.
you supported Sophie, lived at home for, I don't know, some months, maybe a year after
Yeah.
college, and then she
So-
was on her own.
But
And
that's
it's like,
nice. But she
she
doesn't.
had
But the B
whatever
plan to
crappy
her,
job she had
I'm
just to
telling
do.
you right now, her father, I know you're a mensch. She's not on the streets. You're
She
going
would
to
not be
take her
homeless.
in?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Like, our
She would not have
fathers,
been homeless.
you're not going to live with your. He's sober. It's worse than. It's
We have
sober.
mothers.
Yeah. No, my mother, forget it.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
Like, my mother, it's just, she doesn't have the space.
Totally.
But, and my brother Schneier, 41, living with her. And it's actually good. It's actually good. It's actually good.
Which part is good? Sorry.
He takes care. He does, it's, anyway, it's a bit of a Rahman and it's also good. What I wanted to ask you, did anybody ever give you, and that was great advice. I really appreciate hearing that advice. It's interesting that is advice given, because it's almost like advice that people who have nothing, like, we don't get to hear that as advice. Like, we only have a plan A because there isn't a plan B, really. But it is like, I created my own plan B. That's why I went into accounting and I tried to do something, because I saw all my friends had this plan B where it was just their parents had nice houses.
Yes.
So, but it's interesting that that's given that advice. Like, try and pretend you're poor. Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
Try and pretend.
it wasn't don't work.
No, I
It
know.
wasn't you don't need to work. It wasn't that at all. And
I hear what it was. No, I totally agree that it wasn't that.
yeah.
It was just like really commit to this thing, which I think is nice to hear it as given advice. Were you ever gifted something that you loved? Was somebody, what's your favorite? Did you ever get, when I think of jive and I think of all these things and just, it was almost like a boom in music that was so fun to watch from the outside, like NSYNC and all this stuff. And who's that guy? I love him. Clive
Owens? He's an actor.
Whitney
Clive
Houston's
Davis?
Clive Davis.
Yeah.
He would
I
give
don't know
his
about these
he
people.
would gift
I
a
like
bracelet.
Justin Bieber.
Did you ever get a crazy gift, or you not? Or the lawyers kind of get left out? Did you ever? Did he ever give you a watch or You know what I mean? Did they ever anything crazy?
I got nice plaques,
That's it.
gold platinum plaques.
But if you
That's it. That's
compound
fine.
those, you could probably sell the gold.
Are they real?
I don't know. Plated.
Wow,
I don't
that's
know.
really cool.
I don't know. They could probably get $2-3 for them.
It's good
Sure.
wall art.
Now, are you a car guy? Are you a watch guy? Is there anything that floats your boat at all? Because you were kind of in a flashy business. Like, so it's interesting to be like, musicians are some of the flashiest. What was
We
your
like
weak
to
spot?
wear-
We love like material objects on this show.
Clothing is my big thing.
Rachel
Robbie
just
likes
overspent
cars.
on a shirt that is so ill-fitting, Dan.
People
I
have
wish.
really been supporting me on this shirt,
Okay.
actually. I think if it's exactly correct.
Anyway, but is there any like weakness of a material thing that you're like, oh, this is fucking cool?
No, other than actual music, like speakers and
Yeah.
things that But other than that, no. We have 3 grown kids and drive a minivan. So
You're unreal. Like,
So-
you're such a legend for that. But I wish, like, I would love, Dan, like, if I saw you on the street and you were in, like, an iced out watch or something and some
Yeah.
chains.
Let's get him a watch.
We got to get him. You know what, Dan?
Use the Patreon.
I'll tell you this. You're already rich and you may have gotten richer. Come 10 years, if I have $10 million, and I need that net, because I do need a lot to be happy.
Yeah.
Naturally, just to know it's there. I'm going to get you a watch.
but not an Apple Watch, you're saying.
No, that's not a watch. It's a phone on a
Okay.
strap. It's ridiculous.
That's
Dan,
funny.
did this interview go way worse or better than you thought?
It's been lovely.
Has it?
Do you have
I've
any
enjoyed it.
questions for
Yeah.
us? You don't have to. Just I know you've been bombarded.
Yeah, what are you guys working on? What's
Oh,
Oh,
that's
Robbie
nice.
doesn't like to talk about that.
I have eye and horrors. Did you grow up superstitious?
no?
See, I grew up very
Not very
religious,
superstitious.
and
Yes.
everything is a superstition. Like in my family, we wouldn't even see if I had dinner with my sister Kai. I wouldn't say, see you next week. I would
Why
just
would you say that at dinner?
like let's say we had plans
Oh, I
next
see.
week. I wouldn't say see you next week because it's like, what are you jinxing? You don't know if you're gonna see or anything can happen.
Yeah.
So we don't even speak in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe God willing, I'll see you.
Yes, you do say God willing a lot.
Yeah.
Every time she's on a plane, she says, God willing, I'll be back next week.
Yeah, it's true. When you ask, like, when are you ready to record again? I got God willing Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like, why do you ask me these future questions? I wish people who knew
Oh,
me
it's
and they know me
scheduling.
personally.
We have to schedule.
Well, we
God
don't like.
willing.
Yeah, it's just like they talk to me in such a way that always puts me in a position that I'm like, well, I can't answer that.
So Rob, yeah, so that maybe not. I mean, we both are working, which is nice. It's nice.
Rachel's really working.
So are you.
I have so.
Rachel, what are you working on, Rachel?
I'm writing on a TV show right now. I'm developing a TV show. I'm, in the show. What are you gonna do?
I have a couple big deals, development. Well, I have two very big development deals. I can't talk to Rachel about them. I don't like to make her feel bad. And I have another deal that actually I would have liked to send you, and it's not television, but it's very interesting. But I would love to have a lawyer. Are you a lawyer by profession? Did you have to do that or no?
I mean, it depends on what you mean. I was
Like,
on
you
the
could look
business
at a
side, but I was on the
contract.
deal making side. Yes, I would look at contracts. Yes.
If I ever felt something, because it is so scary, Dan, getting that DocuSign. I sign whatever the hell's throwing me at that DocuSign. By the way, DocuSign coming out, what an invention.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, what am I printing? And
I just had to print something for my accountant, and they said we need a wet signature. And I had to go walk a mile. I was hungry. I was tired. No one has a printer anymore.
Well, why didn't you go to...
What's...
It's right next to our house. It's right there they print.
Oh, that's amazing. I went to FedEx
Oh, my God. Sorry.
for emergencies because they know we're getting something to print and it's an emergency because we don't have
Got to be an
them.
emergency.
Don't you think it's like the system is kind of designed to be complicated so as to fuck people? Like, even in the contract of a deal, like it's
True.
written in such psychotic language that no layman, it is its own language. It's like learning Latin or something
wish-
just to
yes.
be able to understand that. And that is by design, so as to be able to hire everybody like you guys who knows what's going on, but nobody else. We should be able to read our own contracts and know what's going on, no?
When we do before we do improv scenes, before you go out, you say I got your back. And that's what contracts should be. Should just be, you know what? I got your back. And that's it.
Well, your lawyer should have your back, but I think it's also, yes, I think in part that is true. They are written in a complicated manner so that the lawyers could do the dance, and the music industry, obviously the industry that I'm familiar with, is not that big.
Mm-hmm.
So the dance doesn't have to be that elaborate
Mm-hmm.
because I would deal with the same handful of lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
The couple times I've read TV, film, or development contracts, they're confusing. They're
Yeah.
confusing to me. The record industry has definitely simplified the accounting process, so that at least that part of the contracts is much more straightforward. It's
Like, could we
here's
not
the money comes in
theoretically-
and you get this percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
love
there are
that.
costs to be deducted, and it's kind of laid out there. And I mean I like that. It's in
Yeah,
favor
like,
of
could
that.
we not, let's say there's ever a bad deal. I feel like, should you not be able to go to court and be like, I didn't understand it. The lawyer, yeah, well, you have a lawyer. Yeah, the lawyer called me. I didn't understand what the hell he said either. Do you understand me? I'd be like, yeah, because you're speaking English.
Yeah.
Is this deal in English? No, it's it's like reading old-timey English. Like, Shakespeare is like a whole class.
It's crazy.
I don't know. Just a note. Dan, we're so excited and humbled to have been able to talk to you. You understand, and I think you can tell that we were fatherless children and feral in that way. So we apologize and appreciate your patience and even talking to us with this
No, I
lack of
loved it.
decorum.
I
And
loved it. Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. As I say, it's as unfortunate for your fathers for not having been,
thank you.
Sure, yeah.
Thank
more
you.
involved in your lives, because
Right.
it's,
So we could have
a
been good
beautiful thing to be
kids.
part of. You don't, there shouldn't be any award for it. It's like,
Do you think I should
it's
have a kid?
if you'd like, sure. It's a
Sure.
beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm
It's
gonna have
beautiful.
one, Robbie. Robbie doesn't want me to have one, but I'm gonna have one.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you both.
But of course,
Happy Father's Day to all the listeners. Dan Zucker says Happy Father's Day. If you don't have a father, listen to his soothing voice.
yeah.
And you have a father.
Maybe we'll put
for
out an
hour.
episode just with his voice, a separate one, where you can just listen to him, not us.
Cut us out.
Yeah.
And if you're fatherless, you should feel bad, because clearly having a father in your life 10 times
helps.
better.
Yeah.
10 times
I already
better.
feel amazing.
Ugh.
All right. See you around.